In light of recent Taiwan presidential election and the shifting dynamics in the region, we're very honored to have Michael Cunningham, research fellow in the Heritage Foundation's Asian Studies Center, with a focus on China's domestic politics and also the foreign policies. Mr. Cunningham is here to share with us his valuable insights. We will discuss perspectives on the election results and also the implications for the U.S.-China-Taiwan relations and expectations regarding China's stance toward Taiwan. Well, thank you, Michael, so much for having you to join us on the show today.
Thanks for having me on the show.
Well, Michael, we know that you've been here since before the election and now past the election. So what's your take on it? It must be a very intense schedule going on.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think, so many visitors in Taiwan right now. There have been, it seems there was even more interest in this election overseas than there was here in Taiwan. So it was very exciting, a lot going on, and just a lot of excitement in every camp leading up to the election. So now we've got, of course, the results are out, and yeah, lots to unpack there.
Yes, lots to unpack, and we're going to unpack that right now. So we know that Lai Ching-te, he secured this presidential election, and also, but we can observe a very interesting point, that is the KMT actually became the majority of the parliament. So what's your take on this election results?
Yeah, so I think really everyone got something out of this election. So the DPP gets the president. The KMT has the most seats in the legislative yuan, but actually no one has a majority. So now the TPP actually plays a really important role now. And so I guess, really what is it going to mean will depend on how they manage to interact, the various parties going forward. Likely we'll see quite a bit of political gridlock, but it really will depend on how the TPP interacts with who it aligns with, whether it aligns with the KMT to obstruct the DPP, whether it sort of aligns more with the DPP. We know that Ko Wen-je, when he first entered politics, was more aligned with the DPP, or probably most likely, given the party's its DNA and sort of its pragmatism and its values, we may see the TPP sort of most likely sort of take an issue-based approach where it's aligning with the KMT in some issues and with the DPP on other issues. So it's going to be very interesting to see how things unfold going forward.
Yeah, like you said, that everyone gets a part of the benefit out of this, but we also see there is a very significant internal differences within Taiwanese, what they want now, as we can see from this presidential election results. Because we can see that Lai Ching-te, He You-yi, and Ko Wen-je, the results are actually pretty close. So what's your take on what this, our future president, the challenge of facing such results, because there is no actual majority out of this election. It was like majority out of the minority, we can say that.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. So President-elect Lai, he did not get a popular mandate. He only got about 40% of the vote, and that's going to be a challenge for him going forward. Now, his speech the other day on Saturday night was actually quite positive. And hopefully we will see the parties be able to work together more. But if we look back at how things have been in the past, we're probably looking at more opposition from the opposition parties than otherwise. And so, yeah, it's going to be a lot of challenges going forward. I think, what Lai has going for him, if he can manage to play this right, is that we do also know from the election that essentially all parties and their supporters, they agree on what the key problems are, the key issues facing Taiwan. And if he can manage to, up front, work really hard and aggressively to address some of the socioeconomic issues, these things take quite a bit of time to bear fruit. And so if he can act on them really early and hope that they're able to bear fruit before the next election, he may have a pretty good chance going forward, both in the next election and at leaving a legacy as the one who has managed to fix a lot of these problems. But it'll be very hard, especially with not having a majority in the legislature and with not even having a popular mandate.
It's a huge task, especially I don't think is there any like other examples of such a scenario happened before, like in other countries, president election? Or I think this is a very, very special situation going on in Taiwan.
Yeah, I mean, it's happened before, right? Chen Shui-bian never had a legislative majority. But the difference then was in the legislature, the two other parties were pan-blue. So this is really a unique situation for Taiwan. It happens in other countries, but for Taiwan, where there's a party with, just a handful of seats that is really going to make the difference. And I think that can be really good for the TPP going forward if they manage to play their cards right and manage to be seen as a force for good as opposed to only for obstruction.
Indeed, especially because people are assuming that 4 years later, like their supporters are basically younger supporters. So 4 years later, maybe like college students, they graduate, they become like adults, and the students get their voting rights, then probably there will be like another significant change on the dynamics of Taiwan's political situation. But we also want to address on our Vice President, Shelby Kim, the new elected Vice President. We know that she is a very extraordinary diplomat. Through her diplomatic skills, how can we foresee the change that she might bring to the table for Taiwan?
Yeah, so I think her pick as vice president it actually symbolizes continuity more than it does change. So there was some concern before Lai had chosen a vice president candidate. He's from the deeper green side of the party. Is he going to, move in a more radical way? And by picking Xiao as the vice president, he essentially was signaling continuity. And so, the Tsai administration had a lot of success on the diplomatic front as far as unofficial diplomatic allies goes, in particular the relationship with the US and with Europe and whatnot. And all of this was happening even before Xiao became the representative to the US, but she did a tremendous job once she was there, and she is almost universally recognized as having done a really good job there. And so I do think that, for those who are concerned that there will be some radical deviation on the diplomatic side, I think this should really point to the idea that there will probably be more continuity and we'll see more of the same type of progress, continued movement in that direction as far as unofficial diplomacy goes. As far as official diplomacy goes, I guess we'll have to see if Lai and Xiao can manage to hold on to some of the official diplomatic partners so that they don't keep losing them, because that is also very important for Taiwan as far as international legitimacy goes.
Yeah, speaking of this force, we also know that, the Taiwan Strait, there is also always this intense tension going on. And also, what are our expectations of being, because this is a geostrategic flashpoint that's going on, from now on, what's the Taiwan, US, and also China's triangular relationship, especially after, like we said, Lai Ching-te and Shelby Kim got elected?
Yeah, well, I think it'll also be very similar to what it was before. So, Taiwan is in a sort of a unique situation in that it's sort of, in a way, caught in the middle of US-China competition, but at the same time, it is, from Beijing's perspective, the most sensitive issue in the US-China relationship. So it plays a really, really interesting role. But I think, on the China side, President-elect Lai has been adamant that he will continue President Tsai's moderate approach, and that's very positive. At the same time, we have to understand that Beijing doesn't view that approach as moderate, and Beijing deeply distrusts the DPP and everyone affiliated with it. So we can't expect to see a reduction of tensions, but at the same time, the same pressures that Beijing is facing both domestically and internationally, that are impeding it from or keeping it from doing something more drastic remain in place. And so we should expect to see continued military provocations from Beijing, continued economic measures and measures aimed at really squeezing Taiwan diplomatically. But I would not expect any kind of attack on Taiwan during Lai's tenure, provided things continue generally the way they are, and Taiwan's position and the U.S. position doesn't change. I would say also, on the U.S. side, U.S. support for Taiwan is going to continue to be strong. We're already seeing indications of that, and that the U.S. will remain Taiwan's most important unofficial diplomatic partner.
What's the likelihood of, the tension of the military actions escalating as well?
Well, so the military tension is going to remain. Beijing is going to continue to use military provocations. As far as an actual armed attack on Taiwan, that was unlikely before the election, and it's still unlikely after the election. And the reason for that, from Beijing's perspective, China's leaders have no greater interest than to stay in power in mainland China. And Taiwan is actually a very sensitive issue, to the extent that if they mess this issue up, so let's say they try to take Taiwan by force and they fail, which they believe there's a high likelihood of failure, especially given that they assume that the US and Japan would both intervene on Taiwan's behalf. And so it's just so risky for them to attack Taiwan unprovoked. Now, if Taiwan were to move towards formal independence, that would be a different issue. But even if Lai wanted to do that, and all of his more recent statements and his selection of Xiao indicate that he does not even intend to move in any direction like that. But even if he wanted to, there are so many constraints to doing that. It would essentially probably require a constitutional amendment, which would be essentially impossible. Even if the DPP had a firm legislative majority, it would be essentially impossible. And so the likelihood of movement in that direction, in the direction that would be clearly crossing Beijing's red line, is extremely low. The greatest risk continues to be, as Beijing engages in military provocations, that escalation could occur and miscalculation on one side or the other, and that could lead to some kind of armed conflict. So that's what I'd be most concerned about.
Thank you so much, Michael, for joining us and sharing with us your expertise today.
Thanks for having me on the show.